Wes and Ted's Excellent Conversation, a podcast about teaching, learning, and anything else that pops into Wes and Ted's heads.
R.I.P. Rush Limbaugh today. That's one thing that happened.
R.I.P. Rush Limbaugh?
Yeah, you didn't see that?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, well.
I'm not normally made happy by people dying. I'll just leave it there.
I know. I get it. I'm no fan. This is not a political podcast.
I mean, I'm sure he's lovely to his family. There are many nice things to say about him, but fundamentally, when you make a career out of screaming fire in a crowded theater, you don't get my vote. Yeah,
totally. But he didn't need your vote, you know. He had plenty of other votes, plenty of other listeners.
Right,
yes. Yeah. But yeah, that's one piece of news from the day.
Okay.
What else? Yeah. In fact, COVID's down. The COVID count is down, which is good to like pre-Thanksgiving levels.
Okay.
12 or 13% of the country has gotten their first COVID shot.
That's some good news. I can get behind that.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
And with that sort of as the historical, precedent for the episode, hello and welcome to Wes and Ted's Excellent Conversation.
Indeed.
We always introduce the other person, which is kind of fun. So I'm just going to jump in and say that the other guy sitting here across the computer from me is Wes Carroll. You can find him most easily at wescarroll.com, 2 R's, 2 L's. He is a graduate of MIT, and I would say a true sort of, I was going to say hobbyist, but that's not the right word.
Sounds good so far.
Oh gosh, I know. And there's a better word for it. I just don't have it right now. He's a man who pursues the art of problem solving with a sort of a true passion, and he shares that with his students. And it's a cool thing to see, and it's something I value. So that's Wes Carroll. Also, it's always my goal. Well, and it's easily done to introduce him a different way every single time.
Oh, yeah, that is nice. I do like that.
Other than the website. Yeah.
Let's see here. So Tutor Ted Dorsey is my co-host here. Is that right? That's nice. So that does not look like it was made by a professional design firm, although it might have been for all I know. I don't know.
No, it wasn't. It was made by one of my former students who is now an adult who would probably be like not embarrassed, but he'd blush a little bit maybe at the fact that he had done this. But it's very sweet, and I chose it for the podcast just because it's sweet. It says Tutor Ted. It has my little self-portrait on it.
No, I think it's great.
Thanks.
What can I say about Tutor Ted? Let's see now. First of all, you are the... Well, I would say I was going to say junior, but younger perhaps, but not junior member of the podcasting experience here. It's always, you know what? I'm not going to go negative, and I'm not going to say it's embarrassing. I'm going to say it's inspiring. All the things that you have achieved, even though you have had somewhat less time in which to make those achievements than I, and that's always very very encouraging to me. It's just like, yeah, wow. you can get a lot.
Thank you, Wes.
Done. Absolutely.
It's so easy to see that from. It's so easy to value someone else's career more than you value your own. You know what I mean? Because
I do know what you mean.
I totally disagree with you. I appreciate it, but it's hard to see any. I don't know. I do. I disagree with you. So, but thanks for the nice words.
I will say. So Ted, a lot of good things to say about Ted. So let's see. Now you were Princeton guy, weren't you?
Yep. Princeton class 2000. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Princeton class 2000. So obviously you're well known, especially in the LA area, but nationwide, I'd say, and probably beyond for your ACT and SAT prep, books, curriculum, private tutoring, systems, I think we can say, which is a part of what I really find fascinating about you is that not only did you pick apart this test and figure out, okay, what are the ins and outs here from the perspective of a lot of different kinds of students, but you then were able to systematize it in a way that allows other members of your team to take advantage of it, but without depersonalizing it. And that's a tough line to walk. I really love your writing style. But
go on.
Even more, I really appreciate your your conversational style. I enjoy that we get to go kind of wherever it is that we go. And it's one of the things that I really enjoyed being. It's one of the reasons I enjoyed college was that, you're surrounded by all these brilliant people and you never know where the conversation is going to go. And it's always super interesting. And so many of us become grinds as we leave college and enter the workforce. And I'm so delighted that you've hung on to the spark. That makes it fun for me and hopefully for the other people who are listening along as well. So
wow, that's kind of you. Yeah. I mean, you could call me, I don't know, I'm either a polymath or a dilettante or something in between those two things.
I alternate those. Yeah, those are the two ways I describe myself. And I think that's the right way to think of it. Because if you lose beginner's mind, you've kind of lost the whole game, right?
Oh, that's so interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that term before, beginner's mind. I mean, I know what it means, but that's that's really interesting. Do you have a particular source for that term? Does someone use that a lot?
Oh boy. So I feel like that's borrowed from a particular subsection of Zen philosophy, but I could be oh wow. Maybe I've just embarrassed myself for everyone who listens because everyone's like, no, you idiot. That's from this other thing. I don't know where it's from, but
that's funny.
Yeah, it's
you know me and how good I am with names. What was the name of the podcast we were going to do besides this one? The other one? Oh, Out of Our Depth.
Out of Our Depth, right. I wasn't remembering. Yeah, Out of Our Depth.
This is an episode of Out of Our Depth. And the premise for that show is basically bring up a topic that the other person doesn't really know about.
Sure.
And invite them to sort of speculate widely and wildly about it. So yeah, if we were doing that podcast, we'd be all set for today. But we're not.
That's right. I think that the original plan, I'm going to stop bumping the mic, by the way. Sorry about all that.
I can't hear it. Don't worry.
Okay, good. The original plan, what I was hoping we could do on the Out of Our Depth podcast is talk about stuff that neither of us know anything about, just to see, because that's always part of the fun. Just kind of jump in there, sort of improv. But today, gosh, sorry about all the noise here. Today, the topic on the docket is burritos. No, excellence is the topic of
I'll do either one.
Why not both? Excellent burritos.
Yeah. I was about to say I could totally do excellent burritos.
Burritos lead to excellence? It's hard to say. Excellence in what? That's yeah, exactly.
Yes. Well, what a good question.
We had a little pre-conversation the other day. What are we going to talk about when we record this thing? And we kind of got into it already, so I get the feeling we're gonna have to, I don't know, rein it in or something. But
well, we also had to cut ourselves off during the pre-conversation because it was like, I was like, oh no, there's a lot of good stuff here. Don't say it now.
Don't spoil it. Save it.
And don't forget that you haven't said it yet in the recording.
Okay, so I'll throw a bunch of stuff out there. First of all, excellence. Completely arbitrarily defined, although there are a lot of societal constructs that sort of put some shape on it in a lot of cases,
which I think is important.
For sure.
That it is defined by societal constructs, but keep going.
But you get to define it yourself, and indeed defining yourself is part of the work of a life. I think that was a thing that we, it ties into identity and all these different kinds of things.
Yes. I don't totally agree with that, but I'll come back.
I think that's all good. Yeah, no, it's great. I guess the one of the ways in which this topic really resonates for me is that I grew up in a time and a place where excellence was very well and tightly defined in a way that there was a lot of buy-in. This is the thing we're trying to do here. And there were already some systems in place for doing it, some of which were well suited to individual students' personalities and some of which weren't. And yet, so many of us who were on a path kind of like that, I want to get into a, very highly rated school, whatever rating means in that context, right? Find themselves later saying, geez, I did all the stuff. Why now what? Like, why am I not happy? Or why is, what's the next step, or, all that kind of good stuff. I feel like in many of the, in the cohort of people that I went to high school and college with, a lot of us had that kind of moment of like, oh, right, we've been following someone else's agenda this whole time. And now we have to define the agenda for ourselves. And like, no one ever taught us that skill. And the whole point is that if someone teaches you the skill, you aren't acquiring it. Like, the whole point is you've got to figure out sort of what it is for you. Okay, so I've probably gone way, if not off topic, at least maybe broader afield than.
I don't think you've gone broad afield at all. I think there's just a lot. There's a lot there. You know. I think that it's interesting because this topic feels very natural. I think it is very natural for you and for you and me. Make sure gotta get that grammar right. It's very important. You know, if I say for you and I, then like
definitely going to be embarrassing comments if you make a grammar mistake on the. That's pretty funny.
That's one of my reverse snobbery ones too. The one where it's like people overcorrect and use the subject pronoun I there. It's like, oh no, you don't want I.
That's not how that goes. No,
that's actually incorrect this time.
Sorry, nicely done though. Yeah.
We were both, and I know something about your upbringing, and not, I wasn't there for it, but I know from my own that excellence was sort of that was part of the set of expectations in general. That was just sort of like stated that I would be trying to achieve excellence, and was in programs like the gifted and talented program,
right? And
we just it's interesting because to me it feels almost more like a label than anything else. And just a label, that it doesn't signify enough concretely to like warrant a really clear definition. And I'll, that's me throwing out a position and kind of hoping for the best on it. You're absolutely welcome to disagree with me. I mean, like, I guess my question is, my question is there a standard for assessing or vetting or judging excellence?
Sure. Absolutely. I'll come up with a couple different standards for judging excellence. One of them is, can I beat you, whoever you are, and whatever beat means, right? Okay. So in the context of college admissions is, do you get one of the good letters or one of the bad letters? Knowing that there's a finite number of good letters that are going out and a practically limitless number of bad letters that are going out, right? So there's that sort of zero sum, not necessarily cutthroat, but it can be, right? There's that zero sum aspect of, have you gotten whatever it is? Okay. And I think a lot of, it's built into all kinds of different. Well, you know what? I'm not going to talk about the culture. I'm going to say it's built into my psyche in a lot of ways, just because of, my experiences and, what training or indoctrination, depending on how you look at it, I've had. And I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of sort of, Lord of the Flies, survival of the fittest, sort of in its darkest moments, components to things we do in our lives, whether it's, try to go to that college, try to get that job, try to reach that salary level, try to have that many people working for you, whatever.
Right. Like that many people working for you. That's a great sort of adult example. Because that's one. No, it's a good one because that's one I struggle with, is trying to figure out like, what does that look like in my adult life? Because I was on that track for so long, and I've got kind of a funny story to tell about that, but I was on that track for so long, and then I kind of left it, and I left it somewhat conscientiously, where I basically decided I'm not pursuing the same things that other people are pursuing. I'm going to pursue what I pursue. And so it's interesting. I feel like in a way I've veered from excellence potentially in a weird way. One example being that Matt and I took a year and lived on the road. Right. And like, it was a really wonderful experience and a great way to, break out of the lives that we'd had. And we built so much adventure into that time and saw so much that we had never seen before. But that's not excellent. You know what I mean? Like that's a ton of fun, and it's very eye opening and soul opening, and I'm a better person for it. But it doesn't fit that criteria, I don't think.
Well, okay, but here's the thing, right? So I've been framing excellent as better than someone else.
Yes,
but
but that inherently means competitive too. You know what I mean?
I probably should have looked this up before we got started, but I don't think that's part of the etymology of excellence or to excel. I don't think that's baked in is the notion of I've got to do better than someone else. I think what's baked in is I'm doing better than I would have otherwise. I'm pushing the natural progression along in some way. And I've always said that the best kind of competition, in most cases, the only kind of competition worth participating in, is the one where you're competing with your past self or the future self that you would have become if not for the thing you're doing right now.
Well, right? I totally agree with that. And I would say that in terms of adaptation and personal development, that like the only person we should ever compete with is ourselves. But here's the weird thing. we don't call someone who, suppose someone is like a C+ student, and through their vehement efforts turns into a B+ student. We don't call that person excellent. We don't call that effort excellent unless someone's really paying attention. That's not the label that gets applied there. I think actually, and this is again, we didn't look this up, and if we wanted to, we could right now, but we hilariously won't. To me, excellent is competitive and is about going beyond other people. And if I'm thinking about the etymology of it, it starts with X. It means like outside of, well, outside of what? I don't think it's outside of yourself. I think it's outside of.
You don't think it's outside of your own limits?
No, I don't think I think it's outside of what other people are doing.
All right. I can't help it. The quality of being outstanding or extremely good.
Exactly. So, outstanding. Outstanding. There have to be other people standing around for you to be outstanding.
I guess that's true. Yeah. Well, I would say that your trip was in fact excellent. And I would say that there is
an excellent adventure, or
maybe be excellent to each other. I guess what yeah. All right. Now I'm starting to more clearly see the problem that I'm having in this conversation. I'm so steeped in the idea of competition, even as someone who's tried to step outside that, right? That I just can't escape, that it frames this issue for me in a lot of subtle ways. And I would say that, the time that you spent with Matt, I mean, you may recall, I don't remember where or how, but I met up with you guys on the road at one point, where I got to tour Julius the Van and all that kind of good stuff, which was just, and it was such a, transcendent is maybe too far, but it really was a powerful experience for me because it was so enjoyable to get to see the two of you outside the context of your normal whatever, because there's something that feels somehow more authentic about seeing someone sort of when they're not in their normal whatever. And obviously, it was really powerful for me to kind of project into that year-long experience and kind of follow your Instagram and, have that, almost contact high of oh my gosh, how great it would be to do all these things. Not because you're escaping from everything else, but because you're exploring something you otherwise would never explore. You had an experience that was meaningful that most people do not get in their time on the planet. And, I got to believe it informs a lot of the other things you do in ways that don't give you an extra 10% on your bottom line, but may very well, cause your life to be overall much richer than it would be otherwise. And I mean, if that's not excellent, then maybe excellence is the wrong goal, is I guess what I'm kind of building up to here, right?
Well, that's fun. I mean, so the funny thing is, we had our talk about this conversation, I think a couple of days ago. Yeah. And at the time, when I first saw the word excellent as our topic, we picked that a long time ago. Yeah. I thought it would be kind of a softer, easier, more obvious subject. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that we'd just be recommending, and we could still do this. Absolutely. This will be the easy part. We can recommend ways to achieve excellence, and in fact, that's what we do quite a bit of the time. In fact,
let's reserve some time. We'll throw some stuff out. I think that'll be a fun thing too. But let me not derail you. Yeah,
totally. Stay tuned because that's and it's not meaningful. I'm just surprised that I've become a little bit more skeptical of the pursuit of excellence. I'm not saying it's not. Like I said, it's not worthwhile, but I think sometimes we focus on it too deeply and too specifically, and lose. And I think that by focusing on excellence, you can lose sight of other greater goals. So let me tell you this. Let me tell you a story real quick. I had a peer who I met in 7th grade. Good friend of mine. I'm sure he's probably come up before. And he and I were peers and friends and competitors for all of junior high and high school. Literally had almost all the same classes, checked each other's homework to make sure it was correct. You know what I mean? We were pulling for each other. Yeah. And he's an extremely bright guy, extremely hard worker. Just, I've got lots of nice things to say about him. At the end of senior year, we won the exact same scholarship. And the scholarship was for students who were going to study economics. He is now a professor of economics at Harvard Business School. I was in Econ 101 for, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes before I decided I was not going to be an economist, and our paths diverged. So basically, you know, we went different ways after that point. But up until that point, and in high school, we were both playing the excellent game, you know, and doing quite a good job of it.
Yeah.
Here's one quick story about excellence that's kind of funny. It's so stupid, but our local congressman, this sort of like liberal Republican, would send letters congratulating students on their like various whatever, you know, awards that came down as end of senior year.
That's nice.
It was very sweet until you started getting, you know, like 3 to 4 of them per class period. You know what I mean? Where like there was just because he was sending a letter for, you know, one because you were the National Honor Society, blah, blah, blah person, you know, and because you won this other award. And like, literally, I remember the messenger coming into the classroom and like handing out a stack of letters. And I was like, oh no, that's another letter from Ramstad. And then that person came back another 20 minutes later with another stack of letters. And it was like, oh, brother, I think that's for me. Anyway, so I saw him during the road trip. I saw my friend.
Your friend, not
Ramstad. Yeah. I think Ramstad's still with us. He has retired from Congress, which is smart. It's like, get the hell out of there, man. Very smart.
Not becoming a nice place to be, I guess.
No. And he was a chillster, but so. We went to this concert of another friend of ours, which would complicate the story beyond you know what we have time for right now.
Sorry, no, please continue.
What did you say?
I said too late.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the concert, we're about to leave, and you know, he's a professor, and one of his students happens to come in, and the only thing I hear of their conversation is the student comes up to my friend Matt and says, "Hey, I just wanted to say congratulations." And that was all I heard. That was the end of what I heard. But the funny thing the thing that like tickles me about that is that I personally don't hear that word as often as I used to. You know what I mean? I get fewer letters, and I'm fine with that. And I've, you know, whatever, I've won like the occasional award here and there, but that's what excellence is basically like an opportunity for someone to see and recognize you and then give you congratulations. And I'm out the game. You know, and any congratulations that I get for the work that I do, other than you being extremely nice to me at the beginning of this podcast episode, comes from me patting myself on the back for the most part. And I've got no problem with that. But it's so interesting that my friend, who like he was such a good influence on me at the time when it was really important for me to be excellent in order to get into college, that he's still on that path. You know, and if you were to like describe how we've divided, how we've gone in different directions, it might be that one of us continues to pursue excellence and one of us doesn't give an F about it. You know what I mean?
You know, it's interesting because there's so many things I want to say about what you just said, but let me just start with, that's a really good story. That's like, there's a lot there. It wasn't all that long ago that I would be uncomfortable putting myself in your shoes in that story, because the, you know, sort of that kind of success in my peer group was uncomfortable for me. What was that feeling? I guess like it would often engender in me a feeling of like lost opportunity, right? Regret that I hadn't done the thing or that I hadn't continued to do the thing. And that's a big part of how I'm thinking of the tie between excellence and someone else's agenda, because that's what I'm hearing in your story.
Interesting.
Right? Is that, you know, excellence.
Whose agenda?
Whoever's.
Just anyone.
In your friend's case, you know, Harvard Business School or Harvard Next School of Economics or whatever. It's like that, you know, Harvard has an agenda, that's for sure. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think part of what excellence does is it ties people together to a common purpose. It's the idea of, okay, we're all like, okay, clearly we're all going to this location together. So excellence is one of the motivating factors to get all the people on the team to sort of do the thing. And part of what you're saying is that, like, yeah, you opt out of that team, like you're charting your own path. And it occurs to me that part of the story of excellence is, in doing this thing, you have become more fulfilled. You have reached more of your potential. You have done an exceptionally good job of, promoting the team goals, right? That's the congratulations thing. And yet in opting out, what you're saying is something different, possibly even more powerful, which is, I have a vision of a little corner of the world, and I'm more interested in realizing that vision than in contributing to some other group vision of the world. And when I look at it from that perspective, I'm much less threatened is the wrong word. I'm much less discomfited, I guess, by other people's successes, because it's just more psychologically appealing to think of it as, like, whose goal are you pursuing here?
Yeah. And they're different arenas, right? So as soon as I'm not working towards this like broader group goal, and that, to me, it sounds like maybe I don't know, for society's benefit, maybe I should be. And with all my sort of inculcation into excellence in general, I think that part of me wonders, am I doing this right? But there is a slice of the world that I impact. It's like, I'm not a hermit. I'm just not. Yeah.
Well, there's another thing too.
Corner, yeah.
We can slice and dice this a lot of ways, right? Yeah. You could have gone off and worked for a university, for a hedge fund, for a, pick your thing, right? That, is very competition driven and has clear score. I'm thinking of hedge fund, right? Because I'm imagining that those folks are all very, very carefully tracking their net worths or compensation. There's some number that presumably hedge fund managers use to compare each other. At least some of them, I don't know. Yeah. And yet I think I could also make the argument that while you are not working for one of those firms, and indeed you're not working for Princeton Review or name some other tutoring conglomerate or whatever, you are part of the ecosystem that puts pressure on those big conglomerates to some degree. You are, you're part of the bluntest thing, right, is you're part of the ecosystem that is feeding these top tier schools in some sense, right? Some part of your energy that goes towards SAT and ACT prep, ultimately serves the purpose of helping these very selective universities decide who they're going to admit, blah, 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 blah. And there's all kinds of classist and presumably racist and many other ists that go into that whole system. And, it's like you said, you're not a hermit. And from that perspective, it's even less about what's the best way to change the world, and it's really more what's the best way for me to move through this world. What contributions do I have? There's a coach of mine, Eric Nerlich. He's also a very long-standing friend of mine. He's a brilliant guy. Oh my God. And for anyone who's listening in, he's at toomanytrees.com. I'll just put that pitch in just because he's nice. He's a great guy. Anyway, he's often made the point to me that many, for lack of a better word, right, sort of success oriented, influencers and so on, have made a relatively big deal out of the idea that the most important thing is to be kind. And I've always found that to be a really interesting touchstone because of the way it intersects with excellence. Like on one hand, like be kind kind of thumbs its nose at this whole business of competition, thumbs its nose at this business of, do all this other stuff. And yet at the same time, like it's a genuinely challenging goal. Like kindness is not always easy, right? And it's for the purpose of becoming more, I don't know how else to say it, right? Self-actualized, right? To actually have, to move through the world in a way that's making the world better and making your journey through it better. It seems super fluffy from the outside, but when you start looking at it, it's like, well, no, wait a minute. There's some there. There's something to be said about the idea of, for lack of a better way to put it, choose your path or someone else will do it for you.
Yeah, I mean, I that makes perfect sense to me. I think kindness, it can be hard to do. I think you just need to do it conscientiously. You know what I mean? And I also don't. Kindness is not a zero-sum game either.
Yeah.
You know, you can do as much or as little of it as you want to, and the world will continue on either way. So I think it's sort of like outside. I would put that outside the realm of excellence, just that specific, you know, are you climbing the ladder? It's like, are you climbing the ladder and being cool about it, or are you a dick? You know, that's what that question is asking for me. You know, are you kind or not? Yeah, I'm a fan. I know that kindness is good. Kindness is good for your self-actualization, and your self-actualization is good for your lifespan. You know, that literally people who are kind live longer, you know, and in a substantive way, a measurable way, which is cool. And you know, so I think you ought to be kind for reasons other than extending your lifespan. But if that's the reason you do it, I can get behind that too.
Sure.
Why am I coming down so hard against? I'm not against excellence, but why am I having such a hard time endorsing it? Is it because I've wandered so far afield from it?
Well, I mean, let's explore, right? There's the zero-sum aspect of so many ways excellence manifests. And we're trying to avoid zero-sumness, it sounds like both of us in general.
So, yeah.
I've come down on the side of excellence suggests someone else's agenda, which I tend to rebel against. I'm not interested in someone else's agenda. I mean, obviously, we're all living in a society, like you can't avoid it entirely, but there's a question of degree, right? I run my own practice, my own firm, and I'm not working for somebody else in that sense, and all that kind of stuff. I think there's more to it too, though. I mean, I'm suspecting that I probably, I'll put it this way. My childhood was not made any easier by the pursuit of excellence.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's not to say that an easy childhood is necessarily the goal.
Right.
But, in addition to being some sweat equity, it was also, psychologically, difficult, right? There's stress about that, and some stress is good, I'm sure, but too much stress is not. And
is excellence the positive name we give to the sacrifice of pleasure in pursuit of a nobler goal?
We might delete the word nobler there and just say in pursuit of a goal.
Yeah. I don't know. I could argue for nobler. I mean,
the U.S. curling champion, I regard as someone who's put an enormous amount of effort into something that could not possibly matter less.
Right.
There's nothing noble about that, and yet.
There
is a nobility to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, it's not because it's curling. It's noble because of the effort and because of the care and because of the passion and because of, the things that go into, like, I couldn't possibly care about curling, but I care about a champion because I care about that part of the human experience that this person is exemplifying.
And I would say, Idi Amin was I don't think anyone would say he was excellent at being a dictator. I mean, he excelled at it. I don't know. I mean, he was for a long time.
If you're not willing to say that he excelled at being a dictator, then I think you've bought into the be kind thing more than you're letting on.
Yeah. Kind of depends on the use of that word too. You know what I mean? Like
kind?
No. Excel, like kind of like almost like the part of speech you use it in. Like, would you say Idi Amin was an excellent dictator?
It feels like a non sequitur, or not a non sequitur, but what do you call it? Oxymoron.
A paradox? Is it possible to be an excellent dictator?
Huh.
But if you were theoretically, if you were an excellent dictator, you would have been really good to your people, as well as mandating all policy.
Well, would an excellent? Well, I mean, all right. So now you're getting there, right? Is an excellent dictator an exceptionally benevolent one or an exceptionally effective one?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think that there's some. I think goodwill sort of gets rolled in with excellence.
Well, all right. In that case, I'm coming around to the idea that excellence is something worth pursuing, but it's got to be married to that benevolence or that goodwill in order for me to get behind it. Because otherwise you're just a cog in somebody else's machine, and who knows what,
right,
ill you're causing. Right. It's so funny that I should be defending this too, because, one of the big things that was always a part of the science education, on the path that I was on is, scientists have an obligation to be sort of morally aware. You've got to be, because you're going to be, you're going to go discovering things that will then be used. Right. And, there's this long history of scientists and engineers and researchers and so on, very strongly fighting, weapons manufacture and stuff like that, because, the work we're doing is, being put to ill ends. And I've always found that noble, but sort of, I don't know, I never really connected with that so much, at the time that I was first being trained as an engineer or a scientist or whatever, just because it seems so far outside the bounds of, God, it sounds terrible, but relevance, right? To me at the time. And yet now I look back and it's like, no, that's the whole thing. And maybe it's because at the time it was like, well, any energy you spend on anything other than being really good at this is going to prevent you from becoming as good as you might become. There's that rat race quality of like, you can't afford to spend time thinking about anything other than, okay, we're going to achieve here.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking is the motivation behind pursuing excellence. It's the rationalization of that energy spend.
Oh, that's interesting. If you're going to do something that extreme, you have to have a real good carrot at the end. And the carrot is, I'm the best. Yeah, totally. Like,
you did it, but were you excellent at it?
That's so funny. I sort of, like, in the back of my head, I always had it as my life goal to be world class. And it didn't really matter to me so much what I was world class at. It was just like, that was clearly like, there was a voice in my head that was all about that. And in fact, that really guided a lot of my decisions in my music career, such as it was when I had it. Yeah,
that's fascinating. I mean, it's so interesting because I would say, well, I know for a fact you have been world class.
Well, I mean, the trick to being world class is to pick a niche that's so small that, but I mean, that was part of why I picked the niches that I did in music. I picked very small niches because I knew that would be I was never going to be a great violinist because we have a lot of those, right? And I was never going to be able to compete with those people. We're getting back into the competition thing. Whereas if I picked something sort of different, then, I could conceivably be the best in the world, maybe, because there just weren't that many people, stepping up, as it were.
There's so much potential to take this conversation, and I think we should, into the realm of the psychological, you know what I mean? In terms of like, your motivation, but then other people's motivations too, in terms of the, pursuing that. Why did you want that? What was the, actually, you know what? Sorry. I don't like that question. Strike that question from the record.
It's your podcast. You get to decide.
I'm leaving that in there in the recording because it's fun to have these weird moments, but no, here's my real question. When was the last time you can say with some confidence that you were excellent?
That's interesting. Well, I'll tell you the answer that comes up for me.
Okay.
And you can tell me if I'm dodging or misunderstanding the question. I got to do it from two different perspectives. I was excellent with respect to my own judgment, probably several times yesterday when I did the thing I had promised myself I was going to do in that circumstance.
Okay.
Just that whole business of like, I'm going to step away from the computer and walk around the block and have a drink of water and think about the needs of someone on my team and, that kind of thing. Right. Mm-hmm. Where it was like, I know I should do it, but I'm kind of busy doing what I'm doing. It's like, you know what? Nope. I'm going to do the thing that I said I was going to do. So I give myself some excellence points just for, following through on the advice of my better self. Mm-hmm, maybe that's not legitimate.
No, that's great. Part of it. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah.
But from the outside, like, excellence is a thing that happens when I do my job, not because I'm not because I'm special in any meaningful way, but because I'm experienced, right? I've honed my craft over enough years with enough circumspection that, I'm just really good at it, and irrespective of whether anyone else is better or worse or anything like that. I'm just saying that, like, I had some potential 15 years ago, but now I can look at it and it's like, okay, there's some realized potential there. Like, it doesn't make me a genius. Right. It doesn't make me whatever, but it's like, yeah, that's excellent, right? I can in a particular, very narrow range, I can create an outcome that otherwise would be hard to create.
Is excellence an end zone? You know what I mean? Is it like, do you get to it and like you've scored a touchdown, or is it a continual pursuit?
Well, I mean, as sure as you're sitting there that there are 10,000 different podcasters whose excellence is a process, because even if you frame it as an end goal, the only way to achieve that end goal is to frame it for yourself as a process.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, it's a tricky question that you put there, but, no, it's so funny. Like, if I try to ground this in the language of like how we are mentors to high school kids in our work, right? Then it's very easy to kind of give canned answers to that question. But I would say that you've got to regard it as a process, because if you regard it as an end state, then it's an end state that you're defining long before you achieve it. And that sort of lacks imagination. I think that if you're really pursuing excellence, then halfway down the path, you're going to realize that the end goal is nothing like what you thought it was at the beginning. That's the nature of excellence, I would say. You're changing so much, you're learning so much, you're developing or evolving so much along the path that you could never have seen that end state unless you defined it in a pretty banal sort of way in the first place, right? But other than that,
some goals are like that, and some other ones are more predictable. I feel like in the academic realm in particular, like there is the get into college, and like, get into the name brand college in particular. And there are these names and we put them on a ranking list, and everyone's aware of where their college is on that list. So I think some of them are a little more defined. And I think there are people who are able to go through life on always pursuing a goal that has a name and even has like at least a rough process of getting to that goal.
Yep.
By the end of my career, I would like to be president of a college or something like that. It's hard to make that happen, but it can be done, and people do it. And it's you just kind of keep taking the steps to get there. It's almost like earning a black belt or something like that in karate.
Yeah. It's funny. A buddy of mine just successfully tested for his 8th degree black belt, if you can believe that.
Wow. That's actually insane. Isn't that? That's like really insane, isn't it?
And you watch this guy and it's just like you're watching it at like 2/3 speed and it still looks like an outtake from the Matrix. Like, it's really cool. But in talking with him, like, it is like, obviously it's a very difficult thing to do. And yet at the same time, it is the culmination of a near countless series of steps, each of which are just a step. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to downplay the achievement, but I do want to point out, like, it's achievable. He's a human guy. He's done some stuff, right? And more than anything else, it's just been sort of the accretion of a lot of steps and decisions and willpower and all that kind of good stuff.
But isn't that what the pursuit of excellence is? You know what I mean? Like, we don't call innovators excellent.
You know what? All right. And now I'm gonna put my finger on one of the things that's bothering me about this.
Yeah.
Okay. I really feel like, do I really want to out myself in this way? Yeah, let's go there. Let's see what happens.
I can't wait.
So, now I got to deliver, right? I feel like, so much of the recent history of our country, the past half century or whatever, maybe a little longer than that, has been about, history of any country, right, is the history of innovation and pursuit of excellence and all that kind of good stuff on some level. But I really feel like one of the things that we've done, the U.S., is hyper specialize parts of our labor force. We've we've taken, what am I trying to say? I don't want to use the word capitalism. It's sort of too broad of a canard. We've done a really good job of encouraging and empowering people to become cogs in an extremely powerful and successful innovation and value generation machine.
No doubt.
And there have been places in our history where that's the thing that kept us from a very bad collection of outcomes. Like, I mean, there is a lot of good that has come from sort of the economic uplift and all that kind of good stuff. And yet, it's not all good, right? Part of helping everyone do that and sort of greasing the path down to becoming, a particular cog in that machine is that it becomes very easy to lose sight of some of these other things, because there is always this trade-off. There's this thing of like, look, am I going to spend that quantum of my personal energy becoming marginally better at the thing? Or am I going to spend it on, whatever it means to me to be a whole human on this planet? Right. I mean, I'm really outing myself, right, as like a Berkeley, California native when I say stuff like that. And yet, I grew up in deep red Midwest Indiana, and now I live in sort of, crazed town, Berkeley, California. And I really think that like there's a lot of good to be said for the idea of, learn your trade, be very good at it, do your part of being part of the system. And I think that that for a lot of people, of course I'm going to learn this stuff, and I'm going to still be a good person, and I'm still going to help my neighbor, and I'm still going to, be a human.
Right.
Whereas, for some people it's like, well, if being good is good, maybe being excellent is better, and excellence therefore means ignoring all that other sort of distracting stuff. And then you get the people who are jerks because they're chasing tenure so hard, or because they're chasing their, whatever it is. I don't mean to pick on tenure in particular.
No, that's a good point. I think that the idea that it's not the only thing you're not limited to only pursuing excellence. I will stand by that. I think excellence is about being a really great cog in the machine, a really important gear. That it's like, I don't think you'd call Marie Curie an excellent scientist. And she was, obviously, you know what I mean? But like but she's something different than that. She's like pioneering, or, what are the words for it? Excellence, not the word you use for someone who does something brand new.
Excellence, not the word you use for someone who does something brand new. Isn't that interesting?
Innovative.
Yeah. That's starting to get to why the whole thing kind of bugs me, is that it's held out as sort of the end all be all, when in fact it's one of many paths to a good outcome. I'll just say, I don't want to say success or happiness, but a good outcome, I'll just say.
It's almost like, weirdly, it's almost like a path to another path. And what I mean by that is that it enables opportunities, right? That like, if you accomplish a certain goal, so like, I'm not sure this might be the last time I was excellent. And I don't know. That's probably not true, but I know this was one time when I was excellent, was basically in high school. I was an outstanding high school student,
because it was such a constrained environment, and excellence, like there was such a well-defined, this outcome is better than that outcome, and you could just put them on a line.
Yes. Yeah. And this I think is a good segue to talking about like how to be excellent, right? Which, God love you if you've been listening to this entire podcast and waiting for this moment.
We got to deliver.
Okay. We're finally there. We're almost there.
All right.
And we're going to be great about it. I think it's going to be relatively easy advice to follow and pretty succinct. And this is the start of it for me. Is I knew what I was supposed to do in high school. I knew what the job was,
right?
And I knew what my goal was. I think that's important too. I think that like you're excelling towards a point generally. And then it was just, okay, great, do the work and deliver the grades and be the captain of the swim team in my case, even though you don't really like swimming, which I didn't, at all.
Captain of the swim team. That's
I know.
awesome.
And I was the best person on the team, it's like, this is madness. But it was in pursuit of that goal. So if I were to kind of break it down for starters and say, how does the listener, how do I what would I tell my students in terms of like being excellent? I would start by saying, have a goal, basically say like, you need to have it in order to have something to pursue. So, okay, great. The goal is I would like to go to art school. And there's 3 art schools that I would feel really satisfied about going to. So I want to go to one of those 3 art schools. Awesome. That's step 1. The other steps are, I'm just free-forming here, but looking at people who have gone to those schools and figuring out how they made that happen. And then pursuing those, a similar set of goals, they don't have to be the exact same things. You don't have to do the exact same work that person did, but just saying, okay, well, I need to create an independent body of work, say, in an interesting field or something like that. And then start doing that work. So those are my kind of like starting points. What else would you say?
A couple things. So one of the things is, I think that's really interesting. I mentioned, I wrote in my book, How to Be a Brighter Student, a couple of years ago when I wrote the book, something that kind of crystallized for me as I was writing the book, but it had been floating around in my head for a while, which was the idea that if you want to achieve some goal or get some outcome or whatever, it probably behooves you to spend like a third of your time and energy just being really explicit about what the goal is. Because I feel like that's a step I see people skip a lot, and I see myself skip a lot. But it feels for me like a third is about right. If you spend less than that, then you risk kind of chasing your tail or like sprinting towards something that's not valuable. And obviously, if you just sit around all day and do nothing but imagine what could be and you don't do anything, right, that's not going to get you anywhere. There's a sweet spot in the middle. And I think that it's really easy for us to devalue or de-emphasize the work of goal setting as defining the path you want to walk. You said it yourself. High school was a time for excellence because the path was well defined. You need to have a well-defined path if excellence is to be a possible outcome in the system. And if you aren't embedded in a system like high school that gives you the definition of the goal, then you need to spend real time and energy and effort defining it. Not because it makes you move down the path faster, but because it validates that the path is worth walking at all. And that gets into another thing, which is that so often it's easy to think of, I'll use you as an example, it's easy to think of an SAT coach as an accelerant. Right. He's going to make it easier for me, or maybe possible for me, to get to thus and such place. And we forget that part of the work of experts is to help us define the path in the first place. Adjacent to your work is the work of college counseling, where I mean, I guess it can be about how are we going to, angle our way into name brand school. But I think a lot more of it is about, okay, why are you going to school? What kind of person are you? What sort of school would be a good match for you? Is college a good idea for you in the first place? Like, what are you going to do after school? Like getting into blah, 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 like a goal you achieve at age 17, that's not your life goal. Like, where are you going? You may not know, but if you have a sense of it, now would be the time to put it into the conversation. And so in this way, a lot of the people that you might hire along the way, your trainer at the gym, your business coach, your tutor, your whatever, your counselor, your therapist, right? It's not necessarily about, how am I going to do more of what I'm doing? It's also about, am I pointing in the right direction here? That's such an important part of it. And we forget that a lot. So anyway, you asked what that connects to for me, and that's...
Yeah. Am I pointing in the right direction? I mean, what a great question to both to answer and to ask.
Right.
I think it's interesting. The 1/3 idea, and I get that, and I can relate to that because I talked a big game when I was in high school in terms of like what my goals were, and other people knew it. And in a way, I look back at that and think, I spent too much time thinking about like being explicit about the goal. But if that's your one aim, then don't shut up about it. You know what I mean? Like, keep thinking about it.
I wouldn't expect a 15-year-old to have a good life plan, but I think a 15-year-old is... Yeah, no, I'm sure. But I'm sure you benefited from doing the work of planning.
Yeah. That's a great call. Yeah. And what an amazing journey to go on from 15 to 17, to conceptualize a plan and then pursue it and see how it turned out. That was That was a gift. That was a lesson that was extremely valuable to me.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I really do. So I think that's a piece of it, right? I think a piece of advice that I hear a lot that I find really difficult to internalize, it's one of those things where like once you get it, you get it. And before then it's just kind of words, is no one else's goals matter. I mean, they matter to them, of course. I don't mean to say that you're the center of the universe. I just mean that, like, you know, if it doesn't motivate you, it doesn't motivate you. Stop trying.
Right.
You know, and I think one of the things that makes it really tricky to be a high school student, particularly an ambitious one, is that you don't yet know what it is that you like. And so perversely, a really good plan in that context is don't worry so much about what you like. Simply work at pursuing. Just don't lose track of the fact that figuring out what path you're on is going to be important here pretty soon. So I feel like one of the benefits that I had as a high school student, right, is someone else was telling me what I was trying to do. I got to practice doing it, right? Get good at this thing. And then after I'd gotten some of those skills, then I got to say, okay, what do I want to do with this? And I asked those questions later than I probably, I would have preferred to have asked those questions earlier, but leave that aside for a minute.
But you were gathering the evidence, you know what I mean? You were like, I'm sure you were trying to excel in all your classes, but then you were paying attention to how they made you feel along at the same time.
It's like I found history fascinating. I sucked at it. Like I just that's not my game, but I found it really interesting. And what a gift to find a thing where it's like, I'm not even I'm not going to excel at this. I'm never going to be average at this. Like I'm just not good at this. And yet it's interesting. Didn't see that one coming. Okay, well, let's look at that a little,
It's so funny. I'm like the exact opposite history student. I was pretty good at it and not that interested. Yeah. Although I do like the stories. That was kind of the thing that I fell into is basically I like history when it's telling a story that it moves me, that's interesting. And so that was, something I discovered through English class basically, and ended up being an English major. And that was my third choice of major, when I finally found it. And now that I have been an English major, it's like, well, duh, obviously, what else were you going to do? I do. Yeah. The other fields I was interested in. I mean, obviously, I started as an econ major, as I told you.
Right. Lasted 3 to 5 minutes, I think you mentioned.
3 to 5. That's it.
Good.
I mean, might have been less than that. I'm not sure.
Economists have error bars, right? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I did philosophy because I do like a good logical argument, and it's so interesting to like
philosophy. Like you're thinking, like you're considering in the middle of the word maybe to go a different philosophy.
I think I'm still considering it as a major. You know what I mean? Way after the fact. The precision of it was so fascinating. Just how you get to get from A to B. It's like mind your words. Make sure that everything checks out as you do it. It just felt a little down a rabbit hole to me. I mean, this is me telling a story that I don't know how excellent the story is. But I guess I'm just coming back to the idea that you are paying attention when you're doing the work. You are paying attention, and you are getting insight that you can use to say, like, "Oh, this is the goal, or this is the trajectory I want to be on."
Well, and so we're trying to laundry list out some ways to be excellent. This gets into. This is a proven mathematical thing. Well, it's not going to be proven mathematical by the time I'm done with it because I'm going to totally botch it. But there's this idea that if your goal, okay, here's the setup. The setup is you are hiring a partner for your new firm. Okay. And there are 100 candidates. And they're going to walk through the door one by one, and you're going to interview them. And the whole process ends when you say, "Yep, you're the person who will be my partner." And the trick is when you say no to someone, it's permanent. You can't go back to them.
Okay.
And then the question is, okay, well, at what's the strategy there to find the best person? Mm-hmm. Okay. And one of the things to recognize right off the bat is there is no strategy that guarantees you a good outcome or the best outcome. Right. Like there isn't an optimal whatever. And that in that highly constrained game, the way to do it is you look at about a third of the candidates, and then you take the best one. You take the one after that who is as good as the best one you'd seen so far.
And you're not allowed to take anyone from the first third.
Right.
Yep.
So in other words, you're training your system for the first third. Yeah. It's actually the first 37%. There's a math reason for that. But and then once you have your trained system, then you go out and you get the one who now that you're calibrated, right? You know what excellence is because you've seen enough people now to know. And then you take the first person who meets that criteria, who is excellent.
That's so good. I heard that same, anecdote or example with like partners, romantic partners. That basically,
Cleo
it's like you're gonna
Cresswell, I think, in her book, Mathematics and Sex.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was, you're going to date 20 people over your lifetime.
Yep.
You're not allowed to marry any of the first 7, which is 35%.
Yep.
And then the next person who's better than the first 7 is the person you want to marry. But it's so funny to even think about that and to like, I don't know, we all ought to strive to be the best we can be. Do we all need to strive to be excellent? Is that the specific goal that we need to pursue? I don't know. Is that the label for it? Like, is the person who's better than the first 7 people you dated excellent? Is that the word you'd put on them? And are they the most excellent? And the answer is no, probably not.
Maybe we're getting into the long tail versus winner take all phenomenon. That's such a big part of large swaths of our culture here, is that we give incredibly outsized rewards for marginal improvements in certain areas. I mean, the hedge fund manager who earns you 12.5% instead of 12% gets triple the bonus or whatever the numbers are, right?
I wonder if that's a standard deviation thing. I wonder if excellence is basically 2.5 standard deviations above the mean. It'd be funny if you could quantify it.
I mean, I guess so. So if it's based on competition, right, then it really just depends on how big your sample is, right? What excellent really is just about being one of the very rare people on top or the rare person on top or whatever. But the more we're talking about this, the more I feel like there's a real. I think if I'm going to divide people into 2 camps on this one, there are the ones for whom good enough exists and the ones for whom good enough doesn't exist.
Okay.
And I say that because I feel like I've inhabited both of those headspaces at different points in my life.
Yeah. Probably in different realms, maybe even at the same time,
Well, yeah, I guess that's true too. Yeah. But it's almost as though, could we say that the pursuit of excellence doesn't brook good enough?
Yeah, I think that's, but weirdly, excellent is a form of good enough. You know what I mean? It's just a really high level.
So the thing that keeps coming back to me is I'm really trying to pin this down because I feel like we demand it of our students all the time. I don't mean just we as tutors. I mean, we as parents, we as a culture demand this of the young generation, and for that matter, of ourselves all the time. And yet we clearly do not understand what the F we are talking about. Sort of, like we have a sense of it, right? But like when it really comes down to it, it's like, well, what are we actually driving towards here?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny. That's the ironic aspect of this conversation is that we've been swimming in this water. I mean, this is asking the fish about the water. You
know what that means?
What's that?
We're out of our depth. We're out of our depth. See, it's perfect. It all comes full circle.
That's pretty good. Well, that's a fact. I mean, that's so funny. Yeah, it's so true. I don't want to come off as not being in favor of excellence. I guess
too many negatives. What was that again, though?
I still endorse pursuing every goal with a personal passion and energy that will lead to outstanding achievement. I think that if you put a lot of personal energy and thought and you seek the guidance of experts, you're going to have a really successful time with it. And that might lead to excellent work, but I don't think you should pursue excellence in and of itself. And I think, and the reason for that is I think that it can be, excellence itself might be at times a distraction. That or I should say, not the right goal, not the best goal, in terms of making you happiest and making your life achieve the most possible. I think that I really do think it's a high standard of good enough. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's putting yourself in that category. I swear. I'll bet you could quantify this. I bet you could say excellent is between 2.5 and 4 standard deviations above the mean. And above that is something else. You know what I mean? Above that is brilliant. And you could strive for that too. But I think that if you label something excellent and that's the only thing that you want is to excel, then you're limiting yourself and you might not be focused on the best goal. And also, quick anecdote along those
Sure.
lines.
Yeah.
I was just in someone else's podcast, and it's called Tests and the Rest. It's coming out late this month, I believe. Twice I said, now I'm not advocating for class revolt or class revolution.
Twice.
And it's like, yeah, twice, you know, it's like, oh boy. As soon as you have to say it.
It's pretty funny.
So I mean, excellence is not a bad thing. I just thought it just shouldn't be your only thing. That's my piece of advice.
I guess, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there have been times in my life where it was the only thing. That's an excellent cup of coffee. Like, doesn't that connote to you like someone put a lot of care and skill into?
But that's the right domain for it. You know what I mean? And I want an excellent cup of coffee in the morning.
Now you've hit the nail on the head. Not every domain is a domain for excellence.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
that's interesting.
I would like all of my cups of coffee to be within 2.5 to 4 standard deviations better than the standard cup of coffee.
Why wouldn't we want the standard just to move up?
Right. Well, right. Okay, well, that's a good question, and we 100% don't have time for it. But can all cups of coffee be excellent?
Death to Folgers.
Right. So got to get rid of Folgers. There are some good instant coffees. I would say.
Is Folgers one of them?
Say no.
There you go. All right.
Cafe Bustelo can be really good. We had this carniceria down the street from where we used to live, and we'd get it there, and it's so caffeinated. Like, oh my goodness.
Okay.
2 spoonfuls of that, a spoonful of sugar. I mean, like, you're ready to go.
You're good till Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh. Can they all be excellent? What do you think? Is it possible for all cups of coffee? If if we call Folgers,
I mean, I'm feeling like we're going to need a part 2 of this conversation because there's so many pieces here. Before we close out, have we you know what, there was one thing that we had on the pre-production notes that I did want to throw in there. Yeah. We kind of covered it, I guess, a little bit, but for me, a big part of excelling is knowing what step you're going to take next. And I guess that ties into the business of spend a third of your time planning, right? But it also points out that the third of the time doesn't need to necessarily happen at the beginning. As I look back at some of the things that I really think of as real successes, they were things where, like, I had those moments of, okay, I just have to like go and do the thing and it's going to be difficult and I need to get it done. But, and, we all have those, but when I look back on the moments of excellence, it was when those moments of hyperfocus and those moments of really doing the difficult thing was when that kind of attention was directed at something that I now see was the right thing to direct it at. Mm-hmm. It was like the worthy sub goal, the worthy milestone.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, totally. And I can imagine a few of those in my life where it's like, because that time and energy was well invested, and it was at the time, like, at least mildly painful, slightly painful. Yeah.
It's so funny. I mean, I remember like the high school victories in the, mathletes and all that kind of good stuff, or, I got the good score on the AP exam. And these days it's like, I finally wrangled that spreadsheet and now it does it's like, you know what? Some days you just gotta take your victories where you can get them, I guess. Yeah.
There are fewer victories for adults too, I think. You know what I mean? I haven't gotten a letter from Jim Ramstead in a long time. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. All the more reason to.
I used to bring him in with a wheelbarrow. You know what I mean?
I like it. Busy guy. Probably had a lot of hand cramps.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, totally. I hope they had a stamp for him or something.
Interns, something. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
He's Wes Carroll. He's on the web at wescarroll.com. 2 R's, 2 L's.
And he is Tutor Ted Dorsey, tutorted.com, spelled just as you might imagine. A fine human being and one you should probably turn to in the event that you need a particular brand of expertise, which someone you know probably does. So spread the word.
We need more podcasts so I can feel good about myself. Thank you.
There you go. Hey, whatever it takes. Thanks for hanging with us. Click subscribe, ring the bell, tell a friend, leave a comment. You know the drill.